Hello everyone and welcome to a new chapter of my DNA video. If you remember, in last October I shared a video with you about my DNA results. There I had the chance to share with you some of my surprises, some of my most important findings and so on. So, what has happened since then? This is where I'm going to share with you today. I have been doing some research in the past 6 months since I got the results in October, and today I'm going to share some kind of, experiences and insights on this issue. So, the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is motivation. What made me take this test because a lot of people have, friends, other people as well have asked me, why would you spend, 100 bucks in this? I mean, is it going to change your life? Why are you doing that? Some people do not actually get that, but well, I guess that we have different motivations. My motivation was that, I was born in Uruguay, South America. It's a very small country between Argentina and Brazil. And I knew that I had different ancestors coming from different European countries, Italy, Spain, Russia, and so on and so on. So what I wanted to know is, I wanted to know something about where they may have come from. And how much of their genes I have inherited. So these kind of questions, right? So I guess that probably if you are from a country like, let's say, I don't know, Germany or somewhere in Scandinavia, if you're not born in the Americas, you may be less interested in taking this test, probably because your DNA is going to be more homogeneous, or maybe not. So I guess that depends on each specific individual. So that was my motivation. What I knew before taking the test, you can actually watch that on my video. I'm not going to talk about that so much in detail now. So, but what I knew that is that I had ancestors coming from Spain, also people coming from Italy, Russia, right? So I knew that I had Spaniards on both my father's and my mother's side, and I knew that I have Italians as well on both sides of the family. And I knew that I also had Russian ancestors on my mother's side. My great-grandfather was from Russia. So I was expecting to get something like that, East European, Iberian Peninsula, Italy, Greece, and so on. So what I actually found out was that I am 87% European, 38% is from the Iberian Peninsula, 25% from Italy, Greece, and 8% from Europe East, with a 6% from Europe West. So was more or less where I was expecting. So no surprises here, right? So, however, I also got some percentages from low confidence regions. Great Britain, for example, 3%, Scandinavia, 3%, European Jew, 3%, and Finland, Northwest Russia, 1%. So, the traces, what they usually call trace regions is like there is like a small amount of DNA in order to prove any connection with these regions. But I was actually very surprised, for example, with Great Britain or Scandinavia, because this is the place where I'm living now. So I decided to do my own research, and I'm going to explain that later. I also got that I am 8% West Asian. I got 6% Caucasus, 2% Middle East. I have the results here. And I also got 4% North African. and 1% Native American. So this is my genetic composition, basically. Um, Then there is something that is called genetic communities, which is a new feature from Ancestry.com, and they tell you basically where your recent ancestors may have come from according to the amount of cousins that you share, or for example, your DNA matches, right? So I was grouped under the Spaniards, Cubans, and Venezuelans with a most likely 95%. Although I'm not, well, I'm actually Spanish now, but and I have ancestry and cousins living in Cuba and Venezuela. That's why I am from this community, yes. Right, so as I said, well, there were some surprises. Low confidence regions, Scandinavia, Spain, and so on. So where I decided was to do my own research because these results do not tell you anything unless you do something about that, right? So what I found out after doing some research was that I actually had British ancestry um, that show up in my DNA, and I didn't even know that. So I decided to ask some family members, some relatives, my grandmother on my father's side. She was actually in Uruguay by then, so I asked her, "Oh, could you please find some documents I'm missing here? Could you ask your cousin or any other relatives you still have there to, kind of, well, send me documents you have or birth certificates, marriage certificates, and so on." So she had a lot of time, and she was willing to cooperate, and she said, "Oh yeah, sure, I'm gonna send you anything I have." Um, Everything I have. So she did that, and I got all the original documents. Plus, I also contacted the embassy of Uruguay in Stockholm, and I also moved some other contacts, and I also got some smart matches with other people who share ancestors. So it was kind of like a research on different levels, right? So what I found out when I was reading the documents that my grandmother sent me was that my paternal great great grandmother was Coleman. Her name was Francisca Coleman. I was doing some research on the internet, and it seems that Coleman is an Irish English surname, but it may also come from Germany. Depends on the connections, right? So, but it's likely to be a British surname or an Irish surname. So I was doing also some research. Why Coleman? Why Coleman in that part of South America? It doesn't really make sense. But it turns out that there was like a very long history behind, and I was not aware of that. It seems that there were actually some Colemans in Uruguay that came from Paraguay. Um, and it seems that the first Colemans that emigrated from England into South America were around like in the 16th century. There was a guy there is called Nicholas Coleman. He emigrated to Paraguay, and in Paraguay he helped to, well, he cooperated in the settlement of different colonies and so on during the Spanish colonial times. So apparently all the Colemans in Paraguay, or most of them actually, come from this guy whose name was Nicholas Coleman. He was born in 1516 in London, England, and he had some, relationships with Native Americans from the Paraguay region, Guaranis, and so on. So that may explain why I got 1% Native American. Maybe yes, maybe not. So now it makes a little bit more sense. And but the story does not actually end there. So the Colemans, as I said, moved to Uruguay. They married an Argentine lady who was living there, and apparently there was a guy that was called Carmelo Coleman. He was one of the 33 patriots that fought for the independence of Uruguay. 33 Orientales, the 33 patriots in Uruguay are very, very important um, people, and they even have their own flag, and well, it's part of a national history actually. So Carmelo Coleman, who's my great-great-grandparent, was great-great-grandfather, sorry, he was part of this revolution. He was also the descendant of Jorge Burgues on his mother's side. Jorge Burgues was the first governor of Montevideo. He was born Giorgio Borghesi in Genova, Italy. And there is also an article about him on Wikipedia and so on. So that's really, really interesting. Then on my mother's side, I didn't really have too many new things, other than I found a lot of information on Ancestry.com database about my great-great-grandparents coming from Italy. I found out, for example, that one of them was called Alemano Galli. He was a chef when he moved to Uruguay. He was working in a restaurant. He had a lot of children. I even found out where he lived, the name of the street and the number and so on. So that's pretty interesting. And well, so as you can see, I could actually find a lot of information about my family. Of course, there are still some gaps that need to be filled. And I got I still have some mysteries that need to be resolved. I got 28 cousin matches in Ancestry.com, and it turns out that I share only 4 of them with my mother, who also took the test after I did. So it seems I have a third cousin on my father's side, whose ancestry is German and English, mainly. And we have a common ancestor. Probably it has to be a close common ancestor because we are third cousins, so it has to be around like great-great-grandfather or something like that. I have been in touch with her. She doesn't know where this connection may come from. I don't know either. Because I don't have any Germans or English as close relatives, right? So I told you about this guy in the 16th century, so he cannot be on his side. And it has to be on my father's side, but we have been so far unable to establish any connection. So that's kind of puzzling, right? So we actually don't know where this may come from. And then on my mother's side, I also got some connections from Germany and England. She also got West European on her DNA. It's interesting actually because we don't know about any Western European or Central European ancestor on her side either, and we seem to have a lot of cousin matches in the US and Germany and England as well on her side. All right, so what I got as well is that when my mother took the test, she got 30% Italian Greece, 22% Europe East, 21% the Iberian Peninsula, and 9% Europe West. She's 93% European, and she got also low confidence regions: Great Britain 3%, Finland, Northwest Russia 6%, and Europe Jewish 2%, American 1%, West Asian 4%. And then she got something like Asia, South Asia, like less than 1%, and Native American 1%. Right, so Africa North 1% as well. So basically she got 93% European, I got 87% European. My 8% Europe East comes from hers because she had like a Russian grandfather, so she got 22%. She's mostly Italian and Greek, surprisingly, and she got 21% Iberian Peninsula in the third place. So she's quite split into 3 different groups, whereas I am more like Iberian. So she was placed in the genetic community Italians in Campania, and it was placed in Spaniards, Cubans, and Venezuelans. Although we are mother and son, we got different communities. This is very interesting as well. So, well, my conclusion before I finish this video is that, well, the DNA results per se will not tell you anything about your past unless you do some research of your own. So since I got these results in October, I have been like, I've been interested in taking some, well, steps towards finding more about my history. And so far I have been able to do so. Without this British ancestry showing up in my DNA, I wouldn't have been able to, probably wouldn't have been even able to do some research and look at different papers and find out that it was actually of British descent. So actually what made me go into these papers was, okay, there are some things that actually match in my past, but there are some other things that don't. So I wanted to know if where I got from a DNA had like a, correspondence to different documents in real life. And it turns out that most of them do, right? So, so far I have not been able to establish any connection to Germany or France. It seems likely that it's going to be a close connection since I got DNA matches from those regions as well. But I'm working on it. This is really, really interesting. So what I'm going to do in the next video is I'm going to share with you the similarities, convergences, and differences between Ancestry.com tests, MyHeritage, and Family Tree DNA. So I actually transfer my raw data from Ancestry to these two other websites, and I got similar and different results. So I'm going to share that, so stay tuned with this channel. And if you have any comment or something you would like to add, just comment down below. Thanks for watching this video. Have a nice day.